You ever notice how exams are supposed to be this big, official, serious measure of your intelligence? But when you're actually taking one, it doesn't feel like intelligence at all. It feels like somebody's playing a practical joke on you. You're sitting there, sweating under those fluorescent lights, staring at a piece of paper filled with questions that look like they were written by a sadistic game show host. And you think, this isn't a test of my brain. This is a test of how fast I can turn into a photocopy machine for the stuff I half memorized last night. That's what exams are. They're not about intelligence. They're about memory tricks. Who can stuff the most garbage into their short-term memory and vomit it back out before the clock runs out? Because that's all cramming is, isn't it? Cramming. What a word. Doesn't even sound healthy. It sounds like what you do when you're trying to jam too much luggage into a suitcase that's already ripping at the seams. And you're sitting on it, pulling the zipper, praying it won't explode. That's what your brain feels like the night before an exam. You're shoving names, dates, formulas, and definitions into it, stuffing them in, no matter how useless they are, hoping you can keep it together for just a couple of hours. Then the exam ends and poof, it's gone, like a magician's trick. Ladies and gentlemen, watch as I make the entire periodic table disappear right after you need it. And isn't it funny how fast it vanishes? You study all night, pour gallons of coffee down your throat, sacrifice your sanity, and then 2 days later, you can't even remember the title of the damn book. Not one line, not one definition. You're standing there like, oh wait, did Newton invent gravity, or was it that apple that hit him? Or was it the other way around? Maybe the apple invented Newton. Exams don't teach you knowledge. They teach you how to pretend you know something long enough to survive. It's like academic lying. You're not smart, you're just really good at temporary fraud. And the teachers know it too. Don't let them fool you. They're in on the scam. They give you study guides, little hints, practice exams as if to say, look, we know this stuff doesn't matter, but we've all got to pretend it does, so here's a cheat sheet disguised as legitimate learning. The whole classroom becomes a rehearsal for this ridiculous ritual. And the irony is, the better you are at cramming, the less you actually understand. You memorize all the right words in the right order, but ask you to explain it in your own language, and suddenly you sound like a malfunctioning robot. Photosynthesis, green, sunlight, food. You sound like a caveman who swallowed a biology book, but exams love that. They don't want your creativity. They don't want your ideas. They want you to be a Xerox machine. They want you to copy exactly what the textbook said the way the teacher told you, and if you dare to explain it in a different way, they mark you wrong. You're wrong, even though you actually understood it. You could give the right answer in your own words, and they'd fail you because it doesn't match the sacred template. That's not education, that's training parrots. The Polly wants a correct answer. Polly wants a multiple choice bubble. And speaking of multiple choice, oh boy, the king of stupid exams. What a career. Multiple choice tests are the educational equivalent of flipping a coin with 4 sides. A, B, C, or D. Pick your poison. And the questions are always designed to trick you. Always. They're never straightforward. It's never a what's 2 plus 2. It's always if a train leaves Chicago at 7:12 a.m. traveling 53 miles per hour and another train leaves Saints. Louis at 6:49 traveling 47 miles per hour. And they both meet at a station where the conductor's uncle once bought a sandwich. How many sandwiches are left? And you're sitting there thinking, what the hell is this, math or a soap opera? And the answers are always A, 4, B, 12, C, not enough information, D, all of the above. And you know damn well it's never D. All of the above is the sadistic teacher's favorite way of saying, not so fast, sucker. And don't you love those exam instructions that choose the best answer? Not the correct answer. The best answer. What the hell does that mean? The best answer, so now it's a beauty contest for facts. What's the criteria here? Do the answers have to walk in swimsuits? Do they have to answer questions about world peace? The best answer. That's how you know it's a scam. They leave themselves wiggle room. That way, if you argue, they can say, oh, well, technically your answer was correct, but this other one was better. Oh, better. Oh, excuse me, I didn't realize facts came in flavors. And then you've got essay exams. Oh yeah, the marathon of bullshit. Sit down, here's a blank piece of paper. Now fill it with something that sounds important. Doesn't matter what you write as long as you write a lot. They don't care about quality, they care about volume. They want to see the page fill up with words. It's not education, it's graffiti. The trick to essay exams is to master the art of saying absolutely nothing in as many words as possible. That's what they really test. Can you inflate nonsense into paragraphs? The significance of the French Revolution is that it was in fact very significant. And the people involved were indeed quite involved. The revolution was revolutionary. In conclusion, France, boom, a plus. And exams always happen at the worst possible time. Who decided exams should be in the morning? That's when you're at your dumbest. You've been up all night studying, you're exhausted, your brain is fried, your eyes are bloodshot, and now they want you to sit quietly in a room with a number 2 pencil to recall the exact number of bones in the human hand. At that point, you can barely recall your own name. Write your name at the top of the page, and you're like, oh, damn, I knew I forgot something. And the pressure they put on you, the silence of the exam room, the clock ticking louder than it ever has in your life, the teacher prowling up and down the aisles like a prison guard. Everybody sitting there, hunched over, biting their nails, sweating, erasing furiously. It's not an exam, it's a collective nervous breakdown. And then the one kid. You know the kid who finishes in 15 minutes. The little genius who walks up, hands in the paper, and strolls out with a smug look on his face while you're still trying to figure out if the test is written in English. And you hate him. You don't even know his name, but you hate him. You're like, oh yeah, go ahead. Einstein, let the rest of us drown in peace. And it's not just the students who are miserable. You think teachers like grading these. They hate it. Imagine reading the same stupid essay about the causes of the Civil War 150 times. By the 5th one, they don't even care anymore. They're just circling random sentences and writing a good point in the margins to stay awake. You think they're carefully analyzing your brilliant insight? No, they're half drunk on coffee, trying not to stab themselves with a red pen. The funniest part is how society treats exams like they're sacred milestones. This is it, the big test. This will determine your future. They hype it up like it's the Super Bowl. And what happens when it's over? Nothing. Life goes on. Nobody cares. Nobody asks what you scored. 10 years later, nobody gives a damn if you aced your geography exam. Your boss never leans over your desk and says, "Quick, what's the capital of Paraguay?" Your promotion depends on it. They just want to know if you can show up on time and not screw up too badly. That's it. So all those nights of stress, all that caffeine, all that cramming, it evaporates. The only thing exams actually teach you is how to be temporarily insane under controlled conditions. And yet, year after year, we keep doing it. Whole generations put through this ritual. A ritual that teaches nothing useful except how to memorize fast, regurgitate faster, and then forget immediately. It's not intelligence. It's not wisdom. It's not even learning. It's just a memory trick. A party trick, like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Except in this case, the rabbit disappears as soon as the exam ends, and all you're left with is an empty hat and a splitting headache. That's why exams are the real joke. You ever notice how exams don't really test what you know? They just test how well you can follow orders. That's all they are. Obedience training in disguise. They don't care if you're smart, creative, or original. In fact, if you are too original, they punish you. They've built a system where the worst thing you can do is think for yourself. The best way to survive is to repeat everything exactly the way they told you. Doesn't matter if you understand it, doesn't matter if you agree with it. Just parrot it back word for word and you'll get a gold star. That's not education, that's programming. You're not learning, you're downloading. They're loading the software into your head. And then on exam day, they want to see if you can run it without glitches. And if you dare to add your own little feature, if you dare to tweak the code, suddenly you've failed. That's the word they use, failed, because you didn't obey properly. You didn't regurgitate with enough accuracy, so you failed. Not because you were wrong, but because you were different. You ever try to give an answer in your own words? Try it sometime. Write out a perfectly logical explanation, clear as day, maybe even clever. And then you get the paper back with a big red X on it, because it didn't match the sacred wording in the teacher's manual. And that's the funny part. Half the time the teachers aren't even grading based on their own brain power. They're grading based on a little answer key somebody handed them. They're like fast food workers. They don't cook, they just assemble. Open the box, compare the pieces, see if they match the picture. Oh, your burger looks a little different from the picture, fail. It's insane because in the real world, the people we admire most are the ones who don't obey. The inventors, the artists, the thinkers, they all went against the grain. Imagine if those people had taken exams the way we did. Sorry, Leonardo, we can't give you full credit. Your drawing of the helicopter doesn't match the textbook. Edison would have been flunked for using the wrong light bulb filament. Shakespeare, 0 points. You used too many words. We asked for 500, you gave us a play. But in school, originality is treated like a disease. They don't want you to have your own spin on things. They want you to shut up, memorize, and obey. That's why the questions are designed the way they are. Black and white, right or wrong. No nuance, no creativity. You either fill in the bubble they like, or you're out. And if you ever ask, oh, why is it like that? They act like you just farted in church. You're not supposed to ask why. You're just supposed to memorize the answer and move on. And have you noticed how exams always reward the kid who plays the game, not the kid who actually understands the material? There's always that one student who doesn't study, doesn't care, but knows how to manipulate the test. They know how to look at the structure of the multiple choice answers, find the patterns, eliminate the dumb options, and guess their way to a B+. That's not intelligence, that's test-taking obedience. It's learning how to crack the system without ever engaging your brain. And the teachers secretly love those kids because they make the system look like it works. Meanwhile, the kid who actually thinks deeply, who questions everything, who wants to explore the subject, they're the ones struggling every question. They see shades of meaning where the exam only allows one rigid answer. Oh well, technically, both A and C could be correct depending on context. Sorry, wrong. No credit, because the answer key only says C. You're too smart for the exam, and that's a problem. Exams don't like smart people. Exams like obedient people. And you can tell because of the way they phrase the instructions. Read the directions carefully. Directions for thinking? What kind of brain needs directions? But that's what they do. Ooze blue or black ink only. Answer in complete sentences. Show all work. They don't even trust you to write the way you want to. They've got rules for everything. Even the little bubbles on standardized tests, fill them in completely. Make sure you don't go outside the lines. What does that have to do with knowledge? Nothing. But it has everything to do with obedience. It's not enough that you know the answer. You have to prove you can follow the exact procedure they want. And remember those teachers who said there are no wrong answers? That was always a lie. Exams are built on wrong answers. They live for wrong answers. They set traps, they twist the question. They hide little details just to make sure they can mark you wrong. And if you try to explain yourself, good luck. Oh, sorry, the system doesn't allow for explanations. They don't want to hear your thought process. They want to hear their thought process echoed back at them. And what about standardized tests? The ultimate obedience exam. Thousands of kids sitting in rows like little robots, all answering the same questions at the same time. No individuality, no expression. Just a mass obedience drill. And the questions are so stripped of personality they could have been written by a computer. Which word best completes the sentence? The dog is. And the answers are a running, B purple, C yesterday, D tax return. Congratulations, you picked A. You're a genius. Standardized testing is the perfect example of how exams punish originality. If you look at a purple and think, that could be a metaphor. Maybe the dog is purple in an abstract way, you're done. 0 points. You thought too much. The test isn't measuring your imagination, it's measuring your compliance. And isn't it funny how the system calls this a fair? They say exams are fair because everyone gets the same question. It's not fairness, that's conformity. That's like saying everyone wears the same prison uniform, so it must be just. Fairness would mean recognizing people have different strengths, different ways of thinking, different talents. But exams aren't interested in that. They're interested in whether you can march in step with the rest of the herd. Even creativity classes aren't safe. You ever notice that? Art exams, music exams, even writing exams, they all end up grading you on whether you followed the format. Your poem was very imaginative, but you didn't follow the 5-line structure. Well, maybe that's because I was writing a poem, not filling out a Sudoku puzzle. But no, creativity itself has to be boxed in, measured, and judged. Because heaven forbid someone actually express themselves. And don't even get me started on the grading systems. Numbers, letters, percentages, little symbols that boil down your entire effort to whether or not you obeyed well enough. A student who slavishly memorizes gets an A. A student who thinks for themselves gets a C. And then they act like the A student is the future leader, and the C student is doomed. But look around in real life. Half the people running things weren't as students. They were the ones who refused to play the game. The C students, the dropouts, the misfits, they're the ones who actually broke out of the obedience trap, but exams keep the illusion alive. They tell kids, this is what matters. This is how we know you're smart, and kids believe it. They believe their entire self-worth is wrapped up in whether or not they filled in the bubbles correctly. And once you believe that, you stop thinking for yourself. You start doing everything the way the system wants. And that's the point. That's the design. Exams are not about knowledge, they're about conditioning. Conditioning you to sit quietly, follow instructions, and never question authority. Because if you can learn to do that, you're ready for the next phase. Jobs, bosses, and all the other little exams life throws at you. So when you strip it all down, exams aren't tools of education. They're tools of obedience. They reward conformity, they punish originality, and they train people to value repetition over imagination. That's not learning, that's drilling. That's rehearsal for a life of doing what you're told, even when it makes no sense. And that's why exams are the real joke. You ever notice how when you're in school, they make it sound like exams are the single most important thing you'll ever do in your life? Like the fate of the entire universe hangs on whether or not you remember the formula for calculating the area of a trapezoid. The teachers, the principals, the parents, the guidance counselors, they all get together and act like this one piece of paper is going to decide if you live a happy life or end up in a cardboard box. This exam will determine your future. What future? What future? What the hell are they talking about? You're 14 years old. Your future is maybe getting a driver's license someday and trying to sneak into a movie theater without getting caught. But no, here comes the math exam, ready to crush your dreams. They tell you that over and over. This is it. This test is the big one. This will follow you forever. And then 10 years later, you realize it didn't follow you anywhere. Nobody cares, nobody ever asks. You spend your teenage years losing sleep over biology exams, and then you get a job, and not one person ever comes up to you at work and says, hey, quick, explain the process of mitosis or you're fired. That doesn't happen. You could live your whole adult life and never once need to prove you know the difference between meiosis and mayonnaise. But when you're a kid, they act like it's life or death. You're sitting there clutching your pencil like it's the sword in the stone, and the teacher's pacing around the room like a referee at the World Cup. The whole room has that heavy silence, that doomsday atmosphere, like if you screw this up, the rest of your life is ruined. Oh, Timmy only got a C in chemistry. Sorry, kid, no family, no house, no career. That's the rules. What rules? Who wrote this rule book? Nobody knows. It's just something adults say to scare kids into behaving, and then the exam is over. You walk out of the classroom, and the first thing you do is forget everything. Instantly. The exam wasn't even cold on the teacher's desk, and you've already flushed it out of your brain. All those equations, definitions, historical dates, they're gone. Because deep down, your brain knows it doesn't matter. You studied, you memorized, you performed the little ritual, and now it's over. And that was the entire point. Not to learn, not to grow, but to go through the motions of panic and relief, until you're conditioned to believe that's what life is. And the adults who keep telling you it matters, they know it doesn't. They're lying to you. Ask them 20 years later what they got on their algebra exam. They can't remember. They don't even care. They'll tell you, I don't know, but I passed. Passed what? Passed gas, maybe. Nobody remembers because nobody needs it. And yet, at the time, it felt like the whole planet was balancing on whether or not you could factor a quadratic equation. And the pressure. Oh, the pressure they put on you. This will go on your permanent record. Permanent record? Remember that? That was the boogeyman of school. The permanent record. They made it sound like there was some giant black book hidden in a government vault with your name on it, listing every missed homework assignment and every bad grade. And someday when you're applying for a job, they're going to open it up and say, I see here that in 7th grade you failed a geography exam. Sorry, we can't hire you to work at the hardware store. You clearly don't know where France is. You grow up and realize the permanent record doesn't even exist. Nobody has one. Nobody's tracking your exam scores forever. Employers don't care. Your spouse doesn't care. You could marry someone who has no idea what their exam grades were, and guess what? You'd still get married. Nobody stands at the altar saying, oh, before we say I do, I need to know what you scored on your 10th grade history test. Doesn't happen. But as a kid, you buy into the illusion. You panic, you sweat, you cry. You think the results of this exam are going to echo through eternity. And then a few years later, you're working a job where your boss tells you to refill the printer paper. And you think, so this is what all those exams were leading to. That's when it hits you. None of it mattered. And here's the kicker. The very people who stressed you out about exams are the same ones who later tell you, grades don't matter, experience does. Oh, thanks for the update. Would have been nice to hear that before I had 3 mental breakdowns over a spelling test. Funny how, when you're in the middle of it, they act like exams are the gates to heaven or hell. Or once you're past them, they shrug it off like it was nothing. And isn't it funny how every exam is hyped up as the most important one yet? Every single one. If this one counts, no, the next one counts. No, the one after that really counts. It never ends. It never ends. Midterms, finals, standardized tests, college entrance exams. Each one's the big one, the game changer, the destiny decider. Until you're out of school and nobody cares anymore. All those big, scary, destiny-deciding exams turned out to be speed bumps on the road. You stress, you trip, you scrape your knees, but you keep going. And when you look back, you think, that was it? That's what I was terrified of? You know the best example? People who panic about failing an exam and then end up just fine. Because life doesn't care what you scored on that one history test. You can fail every exam in school and still succeed if you figure out how to play the bigger game. But in school, they don't tell you that. They tell you your future is doomed if you don't ace the test. They make it sound like failing one exam is the same as failing life. But the truth is, most people who have failed exams don't even remember them later. They laugh about it. Yeah, I bombed that physics test in high school. Oh well. Pass the potatoes. That's all. It becomes a funny little footnote, not a life sentence. And meanwhile, the straight-A students, the ones who aced every exam, they're not necessarily happier. Some of them are miserable because they spent their whole childhood obeying, memorizing, performing, and when the exam stopped, they didn't know what to do. Nobody's handing out gold stars in real life. Nobody's grading your grocery shopping or your laundry. Suddenly, there's no exam to validate you. And those kids are lost, because exams train them for obedience, not for living. And that's why exams are such a joke. They pretend to be these massive gates that decide who you are and where you're going. But the moment you walk past them, they vanish. Nobody's guarding the gate. Nobody's checking your scores. The world doesn't care. You can't buy groceries with an exam score. You can't pay rent with an A in chemistry. You can't use your report card as a passport. All you can do is look back and laugh at how much energy you wasted on something that turned out to mean nothing. That's why exams are the real joke.